Good evening. I call the Board of Commissioners meeting on March 5th, 2020 to order tonight. I will be introducing our pastor, Rob Lectern, to deliver our invocation in just a moment. But before he says our prayer tonight, which is going to be heartfelt, I know, on behalf of the City Commission and the staff of Johnson City, we want to let the people know from Middle Tennessee our heartfelt sadness for what they are going through. They've had a tremendous loss of life, loss of property, and for those of us who are in the city business, if you can imagine, in 60 seconds your whole infrastructure has been wiped out. And so it's with great sadness we send our condolences to them. But we can help locally, and I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that we can volunteer our time, money, and supplies through the Red Cross. We can make other donations. BMS has a big tractor trailer parked at their location from 9 in the morning till 7 in the evening. You can drop off donations to Food City and to Bank of Tennessee. So we want to please carry the people of Middle Tennessee in our hearts as they are going through this very challenging time of grief and a long, long road of rebuilding. And so for the volunteer people of East Tennessee, I know we will help out to the extent possible. And now, Pastor Lecter, if you will come forward, and if y'all will rise and remain standing for the pledge.
Let us pray. Father in heaven, our hearts are heavy tonight. I think of those families and those homes that have been broken. Lord, I just pray that you will send comfort to those victims that are in Nashville tonight. Bring comfort as you promise that you will send the Comforter. And Lord, we also know that there's a potential epidemic with this coronavirus. Lord, you protected the Israelites in Israel, and we pray that you'll protect your people as well. Give wisdom, Father, to those that are working in our government to find a solution. And also tonight, Father, I pray for our public servants right here in Johnson City. I pray that you put a hedge of angels around the police officers that patrol day and night. Watch over them and bring them home to their families every single night. And our public servants. And Lord, tonight we also pray for our mayor and our council members who are sitting here with us tonight. Lord, our wisdom is but small compared to yours. And I just pray tonight that you will give them wisdom that is beyond their years. I pray, Lord, that every word that is spoken will be guided. Guard the words that are spoken here tonight. And Lord, guard the decisions that are made here tonight. And we ask that all of these things will be done for your glory. Thank you, Lord, for hearing these prayers tonight. Thank you for healing the sick and comforting the lost. Thank you for being our God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Please face the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Peterson, before we get started, there is one other thing. If y'all would look at the screen to your right, if you're sitting in the audience, we have, Johnson City's slogan is "Go All Out," so we're going to have "Wash Your Hands." We just really want to say, there is a new strain of virus coming through. I think everybody has heard of this. We want to highly recommend everyone just being preventive. I tell people it's my age demographic that's more vulnerable, so I'm going to do everything I can. So we are giving you full permission from the city commission tonight that you don't have to shake hands for the next little while. So we're just going to say, smile, don't shake. How about that? That would be. So we just need to take some prevention and wash your hands often, use hand sanitizers.
Turn off the news.
Turn off the news. But
She's taking offense to that over here.
I thought we were friends.
1 hour a day is all you should watch, and then turn it off.
But we are in close contact with the Washington County Health Department, who will be the spokespeople in our area. And Mr. Peterson, you want to say anything else about kind of where we are right now and what we're doing at the city?
Well, the main thing to stay focused on right now is don't panic. There's no reason for panic. There's no need for extraordinary alarm at this point. This is something that's new. It's something that there's still a lot to be learned about. So as the mayor pointed out, this is for those who are not already health compromised or elderly. This is really just a super bad case of the flu. Wash your hands, avoid contact with other people. If you feel sick, stay home. If you think you're going to be sick, you might want to stay home then too. Isolation's the key if you're sick. So what we're communicating those messages to our employees and encouraging them to use hand sanitizer, wash your hands frequently, the normal common sense things you would apply with the normal flu. There will be a central point of information, and that's going to be coordinated between all the local governments and the health department and the local health care providers, so that there'll be one place to get your information. There'll be one set of instructions should the virus pick up and there'll be multiple cases in the city and the county. So just use a little common sense and don't be scared, don't panic. We're going to figure this thing out, and we're going to continue to deliver quality services and do business just like we always do. So I feel like we've got a good plan, and we're continuing to review and modify plans, and I think we're in good shape, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Okay.
First order of business is consideration of the minutes from your meeting from February the 20th.
Move for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other comments on the minutes? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
The next item, I'd like to ask Jim and Gail Hughes if they would come forward. Yes, Mrs. Hughes, please. You've earned this too, to recognize Jim on his upcoming retirement.
Are you coming?
I am.
I didn't bring my golf gloves, Jim.
You gotta practice what you preach.
Well. This is a bittersweet resolution tonight. Mr. Hughes and Gail, are you ready to have him home? No. Okay, well said. So Jim, we've known you for a long, long time in all your endeavors, and you're always into everything. So you've had a huge footprint on Johnson City for a long time. We were talking over at the golf course the other day. You played the first year Pine Oaks was open, right? Right, with your toddler clubs, right? Full size, okay. So whereas Jim Hughes began his career with the City of Johnson City in Parks and Recreation as Director of Golf Maintenance on January 19th, 1987, and whereas in 2004 he became the Director of Golf with direct oversight of Buffalo Valley and Pine Oaks golf courses until the closure of Buffalo Valley Golf Course, whereupon he was appointed Interim Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation in 2018. And whereas in this role, Jim was responsible for the Park Services Division, Memorial Park Community Center maintenance, coordinating facility use at Cardinal Park with Boyd Sports, and Science Hill High School, and others. And whereas as an avid cyclist, I picked him up on Emeryville Road one time with the chain off his bicycle. I just happened to be going by, and there was Jim. Yeah. Whereas an avid cyclist, Jim also served as the lead contact with numerous bike groups and trail operations in the system. And whereas Jim's contributions to Parks and Recreation, golf, and senior operations assisted in improving the quality of life for our citizens and other users of our facilities for more than 33 years. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the City of Johnson City upon this March 6th, you're retiring tomorrow, 2020 retirement, that Jim Hughes is officially commended for his distinguished service and dedication to our community. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Jim Hughes along with well wishes in his future endeavors. So.
James is somewhere back here.
There you go. Mr. Ellis, come on up. You come on up.
Well, Jim, on behalf of the citizens of Johnson City and the staff and your co-workers, we'd like to thank you for all your years of dedicated work and loyalty to the organization. The mayor highlighted a lot of things you did with golf and Parks and Rec, but having known you for 50 years, I guess, I've known a lot of the other things that you've done for your community. And, you've been active in your church, you've been active in different community groups, you've been very supportive of other departments with ag and hort issues that have come up. You've been very helpful with supplying your helpful hints for lawn care through the years in the employee newsletter. And you've just been a wonderful citizen to the community, a great employee, and certainly a wonderful friend. And I want to wish you well wishes, good health, and lots of enjoyment in your retirement. And good luck, Mrs. Hughes. We love you very much. Thank you for sharing Jim with us for a lot of hours. As you know, Parks and Rec and golf is an 8 to 5 every day. There's a lot of 50 and 60-hour weeks there. And
Or the police department calls at 2 o'clock in the morning.
yeah, let's
There's
just.
a bit of break-in.
Oh, I thought they were looking for Jim. No, I'm sorry. But anyway, I just want to thank you for all you've done, and look forward to many more years of seeing you around in friendship and helpful hints from the lawn.
And it's worth noting there are plenty of opportunities to volunteer at Memorial Park, so if, Gail, you need to get him out of the house, there are things he could do.
Okay, keep that in mind.
Jim, I'd just like to echo what everyone else said and to let you know that I think I'm going to age by 10 years tomorrow with you leaving and that gap being there. But I do sincerely want to appreciate everything you've done, all the contributions you've made, not only to golf, but Parks and Recreation as a whole, and we will miss you. Congratulations.
You always have to see me grab this thing. It's kind of nice to have the superintendent of schools actually taking pictures of me doing something good. It's been a great 33 years. I can honestly say I never regretted or did not look forward to coming into work every day. And I still feel that way looking to tomorrow. Elected body, throughout the years, all of them, with the exception of 1 or 2, have been very supportive of everything we've done at golf, Parks and Rec. See so many other staffers out here, the relationships, thank you all so much. Thank so many underneath you for working with us. It's been a good, fun ride, and couldn't help but say something about my old buddy here and some of the other city management people we've had. It's been great direction, and like I say, I can't thank everybody, the citizens, and all of you all so much for allowing me to do this every day. So, thank you.
Your next order of business is a proclamation recognizing the United States 2020 Census. The most important thing everybody in this room will do in the next 2 or 3 months is to complete that census form. Please just remember, you are worth $1,100 apiece to your local government in
Annually.
over 10 years.
Every year.
That's a lot of money. Please fill out that form.
That it is. And we have with us this evening Kevin Flannery, who is, what is your official title, Kevin?
Partnership specialist.
Okay, we don't know what a partnership specialist is, but he is heading up the census in our area. How about that? Is that good? Okay, so I'm glad to read this proclamation tonight, Kevin, because we want to encourage everybody to participate in the census. We need every single person in this country to be counted. Whereas every 10 years, the U.S. Census Bureau is mandated by the United States Constitution to conduct a confidential count of the nation's growing and changing population. And whereas April 1st, 2020 is nationally recognized as Census Day by the United States Census Bureau, and whereas census data helps determine how many seats each state will have in the U.S. House of Representatives, and is necessary for an accurate and fair redistricting of the state legislative seats, county and city councils, and voting districts. And whereas more than $675 billion in federal funds is awarded annually to states, counties, municipalities, and vital community programs based on the census data. Whereas community planners and governments rely on census data to determine where there is the most need for additional social services, and census data guides local decision makers in determining where to locate schools, daycare centers, roads, public transportation, hospitals, housing, and other facilities. Now therefore I, Jenny L. Brock, Mayor of the City of Johnson City, along with the U.S. Census Bureau, encourage citizens to complete the 2020 census and help all census takers in ensuring a full and accurate count in 2020. And we have our local homepage slide up on the TV over here. If you want to go to the city website, you can get more information on the census. But Kevin, I'm going to let you say just a very few words, if you would.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this on? Okay. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate Mayor Brock, the commission, Mayor Vest, Mayor Grandy. We've been working together for about a year on this. We have actually a joint Washington County, Jonesboro, Johnson City complete count committee. And that's made up of people from various organizations, whether it's faith-based, minority organizations, could be education. Thank you to Johnson City Schools. Well, I'll mention that since we're here as well. And what we're doing is we're trying to encourage participation because it is absolutely vital financially that everyone participate in the census. We are 7 days away from the census going live. So when I say that, the census official day is April 1st. You all will start getting postcards in the mail. They'll be mailed out March 12th. Once you get it, for the first time ever, this one's being offered online as well. So you can do it online, by phone, or mail-in. But when you get that, even if you get it on March 14th or 15th, go ahead, go online, do it. Takes 10 minutes, 9 questions. You're done. Nobody ever comes to your house that way. If you don't, somewhere down the road, somebody's going to follow up if you hadn't responded one of those ways. But like she said, there's $675 billion at stake that's going to be dispersed. If we don't get it, it's not like it's just put back somewhere. It goes somewhere. So we really want it to come back here. And on a personal note, I want to thank you all for mentioning Middle Tennessee. I just moved back here from there about 1.5 years ago, and I was showing a few people the pictures. My house and complete neighborhood's gone down there. So I can tell you the impact, when you see it on the news and stuff is one thing, but to know those people and the devastation they've gone through, anything we can do up here to help would be greatly appreciated. So, thank you all.
Let me add one thing, too. I think the Constitution says it's our constitutional duty to take the census, right?
Yes.
We are required to participate in the census by the Constitution.
Let me add something on that. Okay. So since 1790, it has been mandated that every 10 years the United States will conduct a decennial census. That's a snapshot to get the number of people living in the United States at that given time. I can tell you all that your percentage rate, and I've mentioned this before to the commission, as far as participation in 2010 was around 82%. So that means about 18% did not participate. That's 20-some thousand people when you look at Washington County. And if like, if you look, it's based on a George Washington University study that says that for every person in Tennessee who doesn't complete it, that it costs you $1,091. That's $20-some million, believe it, on the table. So it's for every year for 10 years. So it's vital and very important to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Before we go to the next item, I have a special guest in the audience tonight. We have a Boy Scout with us, Desmond, right? You want to stand up? And folks in the audience, he's taken notes. This is a part of one of his badges, and so we're glad he's here to observe his government at work. And we really welcome you, and if you want to stay afterwards to ask questions, you can, or get in touch with any of us up here at a later time. Thank you for coming.
Your next order of business is consideration of the consent agenda.
Commissioners, are there any items you would like to pull? Commissioner Calhoun?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Hunter? Vice Mayor? No. And neither do I. Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda?
Move for approval. Second.
All right, any other questions, comments? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4732-20. An ordinance providing for the conveyance of a certain parcel of real property located within Johnson City to the Boones Creek Historical Trust upon the terms as set forth herein. This is the ordinance required to transfer the house and 2 acres at the Kefauver Farm that you approved at your last meeting. We would recommend your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? We see representatives here in the audience tonight. Thank y'all for coming. So we have a motion and a second.
We have high hopes for this project.
We do. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
The next order of business is a resolution for the annexation of properties at 5112 Bobby Hicks Highway and 3309 Sid Martin Road in Gray, known as the Stewardship Annexation. Song, if you could give us a brief overview, please, sir.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Commissioners, before you is a request to annex a piece of property on Bobby Hicks Highway and Sid Martin Road. These are the 2 lots being requested for annexation. The properties are in Gray. This request has been submitted by the property owners, Ballard Health. Both lots adjoin the current city limits, and they are inside the urban growth area. As such, they meet the minimum requirements for annexation. The Planning Commission at its meeting last month recommended that you annex this property into the city.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4733-20. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith, and amendatory thereof by assigning B5 District, Community Business District zoning to certain property within the 12th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, known as the Stewardship Annexation. This is the ordinance that will apply zoning to the property you just approved for annexation.
Mayor, Commissioners, the Planning Commission considered these requests in terms of what the property owner intends to do with the property, the future land use map of the property, The map to the left at this point, this is the future land use map. The entire area in red, that's for commercial development. The future land use map does not differentiate between zoning districts. The property is generally bordered by the B5 zoning district, and the proposed use will be in conformity with the adjoining zoning district. Planning Commission recommended that you assign the B5 zoning district to this property.
Commissioners?
Just a comment on, I don't think we addressed whether we wanted to still use B5 zoning or not, that maybe B4 was as appropriate or more appropriate since we weren't assigning any additional B5 zoning. And I think we need to find out from the owner representative if that's an acceptable potential change to the motion.
Yeah, Hank Carr, 3326 Bondwood Circle. There's no objection.
Okay.
We're following the city's recommendation here, but that's fine with us, yes.
Move approval applying B4.
Second.
And we do have other B4 along that stretch there on Bobby Hicks.
Yes, we do.
Yes, ma'am, there is a B4 zoning district. I think this property is B4. It's a B4 zoning district again.
Are there any other comments, questions of staff? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next is consideration of the plan of services for the annexation that you just approved for property located on Bobby Hicks and Sid Martin Road.
Commissioners, water and sewer are all available to this piece of property. All other services, public services, will be provided in accordance with city policy. The Planning Commission recommended approval. With the assignment of the B4 zoning district, it will be important that the motion approving the plan of services include the amendment of that plan of services to include the B4 zoning district because it currently reads B5.
Move to approve with the B4 zoning.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
And Mayor Brock?
Yes.
The next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 472820. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and amendatory thereof by changing from B1 Neighborhood Business District to PB Planned Business District, certain property located at 3061 South Rome Street, ready for your consideration on third and final reading. And there have been no changes since your second reading.
And this is right at Okolona Road across from Borla,
Yes,
in
ma'am.
that area. Be good. Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other questions? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4729-20. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and amendatory thereof by changing from B4 planned arterial business and R4 medium density residential to PB Planned Business District, and from B4 Planned Arterial Business and R4 Medium Density Residential to RO2 Medium Density Residential Professional Office zoning, certain property along Watauga Road and Fairhaven Drive, ready for your consideration on third and final reading. No changes since your last reading.
Move approval.
But this is staff initiated, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the reasoning, just for the public, and why staff is recommending that we do these rezonings.
It's basically to bring the zoning in the area more in conformity with the character of that area. It's currently, some of it is currently zoned industrial in an area that is generally medium intensity commercial and residential.
That's good planning. Any other questions? You made the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next is ordinance number 4730-20, an ordinance to amend section 4.6 on one principal building per lot of the zoning code of the city of Johnson City, ready for your consideration on third and final reading, with no changes from your previous reading.
Any questions of Hassan before we move on? All right, is there a motion?
Move for approval. Second.
All right. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next item on your agenda is labeled as public input. I would recommend that we change the order of that to, at this time, convene to executive session to discuss potential litigation, after which we will return and reconvene this meeting and have discussion and public comment on the interlocal agreement with Washington County.
All right.
For the benefit of those who are here, how long do we anticipate the executive session running?
The executive session will be no longer than 60 minutes.
And then we will come back in here.
We will reconvene in this room. Yes, sir.
The commission will convene to executive session in addition to the school board and the director of schools, superintendent of schools, and their attorney will be going into the administrative conference room with us.
Yes, ma'am.
For the public, we will come back with some information that we've discussed and open it up for public input. If you haven't signed up, if you would sign up in the back of the room, and then we'll explain the conditions of public input when we come back.
And you probably have enough time to visit one of our fine eateries downtown and get back.
Right.
So,
So I will adjourn the current meeting, and we will reassemble
We're going to
in 1 hour.
recess the current meeting.
Recess the current meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
We ran over, 10 minutes, I think. I'm sorry, but it was a good meeting. Mr. Peterson, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think there's going to be some overview of what we've just gone through by our attorney and by you. So,
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Sandos, you want to come on up and get that process started, please, ma'am?
Yes. Since we have just adjourned from executive session, we're going to briefly cover the highlights of what was discussed during that session. We heard from Attorney Eric Herron as well as Attorney Mark Mamatoff regarding some of the potential legal issues that could be pursued. These are controversies that are not yet in litigation.
I want to make sure the audience can hear with your back to them.
Yeah.
It's a hard, they're saying no, they can't. I don't know if a microphone can be turned up back there or if we have any better auditory, but if you'll just keep that in mind and speak
Okay.
up.
There we go.
There we go. If I
There we go, so better. Thank you.
Never been tall enough to lean into a microphone. All right. So we're briefly going to cover just the highlights and the very general broad stroke points of the interlocal agreement, as well as what potential litigation could look like without going into each element of the cause of action. So if litigation were to be pursued on the part of the city with regard to the Jonesboro deal, what would be filed would be a declaratory judgment action. Those are based essentially in contract. What that means is you can have attorneys that will file a lawsuit on the part of the city and have enough argument that could survive a dispositive motion at the trial level. And what that would be seeking is not a monetary recovery. There's no monetary reward that would be sought, meaning a lawsuit does not equal dollars in no scenario. That's not what we can seek. This is a contractual issue. There would be question as to the legality of the Jonesboro project. There's not a scenario that money would be sought. So what that lawsuit would do, it would put a hold on the Jonesboro project. It would cause issues with the bonding, essentially, meaning that the Jonesboro school would not be built on the timeline that it's currently projected at. So that's what would happen if a lawsuit were initially filed, and that's how a lawsuit would be initially filed. It would be a declaratory judgment action. It would be seeking relief in the form of declaring the agreement to be void, declaring it to be illegal. If we were to file a lawsuit and we were to win, there's I guess three outcomes really whenever you file a lawsuit. You win, you lose, or you settle in the middle. If we win a lawsuit, what that means is the courts would have declared that the Jonesboro deal would be an invalid funding mechanism. That means that during the course of this, the Jonesboro School would not be built during that time process while the litigation is pending. We don't know what the county would do during that interim period with regard to their funding for capital needs. We know that there is case law that is adverse to cities in that aspect, and it's not going to change. And that's not a grounds that we can pursue. That is very clear. Our Tennessee Supreme Court wouldn't even entertain that action. So we don't know what would happen in the middle. We know that the current funding mechanisms that avoid issuing bonds would still be an option, a viable option for the county. So at the end of this, if we win the lawsuit, the ultimate outcome for the part of the city would be that the agreement would be declared void, and that is it. There is no outcome where a check would be written. There's not an outcome where the courts would mandate that the county then issue bonds, because the court's not going to dictate the borrowing or funding mechanisms for school capital projects. So that's if we file the lawsuit and we win. Declares that void, we get $0 in return for the lawsuit. If we file the lawsuit and we were to lose, then the possible outcome would be that the city, the more than likely outcome would be that the city would be taxed with the entire attorney's fees for both sides, so 100% of the legal fees, and there'd be adverse litigation or adverse judgments out there as to the city. What that means is in the future, if there were to be a similar funding mechanism that took place, there would be no option for litigation or for negotiation because it would already be a decided issue. So those are the two outcomes. Obviously, the third option that we gave, a settlement in the middle, that's something that's completely unknown, and I can't predict one way or the other. And I can't predict one way or the other how the outcome of litigation would go. I don't know if we'd win. I don't know if we'd lose. Nobody's going to be able to predict that for you. But the two possible outcomes of a win or a loss both result in a zero monetary award for the city. So those are the two possibilities, or the three possibilities if litigation were to be pursued and a lawsuit were to be filed. So those are the possibilities for outcome of litigation. Now, we have the agreement that you will be considering next week. And what we're going to do, I'm going to briefly go through that since this is an opportunity that we have the public here and for the benefit of looking at that. One point to note, the agreement that's going to be considered by the City Commission next week is not the agreement that was published for public notice by the county. There's a statutory requirement of the county that they must publish interlocal agreements for public notice prior to consideration. What they published was not an agreement that had been, that expressed negotiated terms agreed upon by the city. And during those negotiation process, which we understand that you were not privy to, you will be considering the final product. So the agreement that was posted for public notice pursuant to the statutory requirements of the county had terms in there that were not agreed upon by the city. They express assignment of right. The assignment of right is something that the city is not going to agree to, nor can it agree to. That is stricken from the agreement that you will be considering. That is a material change. Since that is a material change, we have concern that the county has not met their requirement for public notice. If that is in fact true, then they will need to vote on this again. So it is good to note that what you would be considering, there is a more than likely chance that the county will have to consider that again and will have to vote on that again. So what we've got for the interlocal agreement that you would be considering, it goes through the recitals, which the recitals essentially give the background information of how we got to where we're at, as well as what this agreement is being entered pursuant to for our Tennessee Code annotated. It goes through the Jonesboro projects. It lists what those are. It lumps them into one, so it addresses each part of that Jonesboro project. We go through the consideration. The consideration in a case, the interlocal agreements still have the elements of a contract. So you've got your offer, your consideration, your acceptance. Consideration has multiple forms. A covenant not to sue is valuable consideration. And we've talked about why that's consideration. If a lawsuit were to be filed, that would, at the very least, put a hold on the Jonesboro project. Not putting a hold on their project for construction of their school is valuable consideration to the county. So that covenant not to sue with relation purely to the Jonesboro project is what was offered on the part of the city. In exchange for that, the county would pay funds to the city over a 25-year period at $500,000 apiece. So that is a $12.5 million agreement. So long as the county continues to issue those payments, the city will not sue. If there is a breach of that, then suit would be filed. The agreement addresses three elements of what would constitute a breach of the agreement. The first would be that payments stop from the county. The second would be that the city sues. And the third would be that the city uses those funds that it has received for something other than capital improvement project for the school funding. In that situation, that is why you will see attachments to this agreement. Those identify projects that the city is already pursuing. Well, 3 of those are already actively, I think, out for bids or close. There was a need to have a capital attachment to the funding to make this an enforceable agreement that would sustain scrutiny for the life of the contract or of the agreement, which is 25 years. That is why you're going to see capital projects tied to this. There's also, we've really narrowed down to what those are going to be, what they apply to, and to ensure that there's no confusion that the projects and what the capital funding by the city with the use of these funds would be directed to, and that it complies with the terms of the agreement. So that's your third element of the breach, is if those funds were used for something other than was identified in the agreement, that would be a breach. So those are your three elements of the breach that is addressed by this agreement. And that's really the meat of the agreement. It's where there was potentially an opportunity to not receive any funds. Initially, that's where we started. We started back in the fall with not receiving anything. And it's not something we've ever agreed to. It's not something that we like. It's a very unfortunate situation that we are in. However, in the midst of the unfortunate situation, there was the opportunity through good negotiations on the part of the city to secure what has been believed to be about the most funding that the county has available. In that process, mandate that the county pay that to the city. The exchange for that is not to file a lawsuit based upon the Jonesboro project. Now, again, that covenant not to sue strictly relates to the Jonesboro project. If, by any chance, you enter into the agreement and 2 years down the road, the county uses Sulphur Springs to finance a school, you could pursue legal action at that point if that was the position of the commission at that time. It does not tie the hands of the commission to file, or of the city to file any legal action for any matter, as long as it does not relate specifically to this Jonesboro project, for so long as the county continues to make the payments.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, you had some comments as well?
Can I ask a clarifying question to Sunny?
Yes.
Just to address, because I've read a lot in the paper, we just need to follow the law. And as a lawyer, I would appreciate you speaking specifically to the Section 315 of the Tennessee Code, 49-whatever 315. Does anything about the action we take here remedy the situation that allows cash expenditure and zero sharing with the other school system?
It does not. That section is a tax revenue sharing section of the code. There is nothing that this agreement addresses that has any impact on that statute. Consequently, the scheme that this Jonesboro project is entered under also does not conflict with that. And there's been outside counsel that specializes in this area of the law that has told us the law does not, this, according to the law, is not illegal. Now, it hasn't been decided by a court. So to say that doesn't mean that it's ever been.
The lease deal hasn't been
Yeah,
decided.
that's to say it hasn't been challenged. But as we stand here today, it's not illegal based upon what we have that
Again,
we're
that's
dealing
the
with.
lease deal.
Yes.
The cash sharing that we should so simply follow the law.
Yeah.
The law says what?
The law does not mandate any way that those funds are borrowed or that school capital projects are funded.
So does it mandate that school funds are shared?
No,
Okay, thank you.
that's not a great question.
Thank you. It's a crappy question, but it's, let's be honest, it's the answer.
As we stand on this side of
Right.
it, yes, I would agree with you. It's certainly not favorable, and it's nothing that we like. It's things that we would love to change, but we are where we are.
And that could only be done legislatively.
Correct. Courts have not, well, yes, actually, specifically to the 315. Our court stated in dicta, essentially, that they don't agree with this outcome. But the law is very clear. The court actually states it is clear and unambiguous, which also is why the Tennessee Supreme Court wouldn't even entertain it, because it is clear and unambiguous.
I think the appellate court actually says, as compelling as the arguments are, ... General
Yes.
Assembly, ...
And it also, contemplates the intent that Athens was making, that it's absurd to think that this wouldn't have been the intent. But the court says it is clear and unambiguous.
Peterson?
Just to clarify a few other points and to reemphasize another one, nothing in this agreement prevents us from filing suit on any other matter of any business other than the Jonesboro school deal, what I'm going to refer to as the Jonesboro school deal. So if we have any other disagreements with the county over, or the city of Jonesboro over anything, we can certainly go to the court system to remedy our disagreement. Under the terms of the agreement, the money that we would receive must be used for school capital and school capital only. It cannot be used for maintenance or operations. It cannot be diverted for other general government uses. That money can be used to either pay cash for a project, to retire debt that has been incurred prior to receiving those payments, as long as it is one of those projects identified in the addendums, which, for clarification to the audience, is the expansion of Woodland, Lake Ridge, and Southside, and the potential construction of Town Acres. It can also be used to retire debt not yet incurred for any of those 4 projects. So it's very specific on what that money can be used for. It cannot be used, again, as I said, it cannot be used for operations and maintenance by any means for whatever purpose. And as Ms. Sandos noted earlier, there is not a suit that can be filed that's going to result in us getting our proportionate share as is defined when a county government issues debt for the purpose of school construction. So that avenue of relief does not exist, as bad as we would like for it to. The law is very clear, it's not there. The only way to close the loophole, as it has been termed, is a legislative change. That means that our local senators and representatives can introduce a bill, which they have, and it has gained no support. I have been directly involved for over 5 years trying to get this changed, and the reality of it is that every county in the state of Tennessee operates a school system. There are only about 40 of us city systems, so they outnumber us 2 to 1. And it's going to be very, very steep hill to climb to get a legislative change.
33 to 94.
33 to 94, okay, thank you. That's right, somebody's got special school
There's
districts.
14 special school districts.
So the legislative change is the fix that we all want. We're not going to quit trying to get that legislative change through. It's just not an avenue available to us today. So how did we get to this agreement? Well, as Ms. Sandos pointed out, we started out with a business deal that the county and the town of Jonesboro had constructed, which would result in a new Jonesboro school being built without the need for Washington County to issue debt. That got us 0 for the Johnson City school system. We began discussions with the county, and the county was quick to recognize that there was some element of injustice to that, and that to be fair and to try to be more equitable in living up to their charge and our charge, which is to educate young people, they agreed to sit down and negotiate to try to come to something better than 0. So as everybody's aware, over a period of probably 3 or 4 months, we have arrived at the package that we have. And, you know, the obvious questions are, did we ask for a lump sum payment? Well, of course we did. I asked for $28 million. That didn't go anywhere. The conversation was going to stop. You know, we came to the realization that $500,000 a year was about all we're going to get. Anything more than that shut down the discussions in terms of us getting anything. The term of the agreement grew over the course of the conversations. We did not start out with 25 years, trust me. It took several conversations to grow from where we started to 25 years. So that's the methodology, the story behind the agreement getting to where we are today. So what are the alternatives? You know, in this situation, you've got a matter of principle, we've got emotions, and I speak for all of us, me included. I've got 2 children in the school system. I'm a city resident. I've got just as much at stake at this as anybody in Washington County. And then you've got the facts of the law. What do we have to work with? And that's all we've got to work with. Okay, we can work out this agreement and we get $12.5 million. We can decline this agreement and/or sue the county and we'll get zero. The county's got a couple of options there. As everybody's aware, they have a capital facility fund. They could delay the construction of the Jonesboro project long enough to accumulate the cash to pay cash for a new Jonesboro school. The courts have decided very clearly that we're entitled to nothing if they choose that route. We could decline to approve the agreement, file suit, and another possibility out there would be for Jonesboro or Washington County to decide, no, we need to do that Jonesboro school quickly. The county commission could decide to raise all of our property taxes and accumulate that cash much quicker and then go build a Jonesboro school, and we would get nothing other than a property tax increase. If we file suit against the county, it will probably be a prolonged trail through the court systems. The loser at the first round isn't going to quit. They're going to appeal. And at the appellate court, whoever loses is going to appeal that to the Supreme Court. So we're probably looking 4 or 5 years. You've probably got, pick a number, $300,000 worth of attorney, $500,000 worth of attorney fees on each side.
Not mine.
We're going to pay 100%. City taxpayers will pay 100% of the city's attorney's bill. And since we generate 63% of the county's property taxes, you can pretty well assume we're going to pay 63% of the county's lawyer bill. So there's a huge expense in litigating this, win or lose. So the recommendation for approval of this agreement is based on those facts of law and those political realities of we're in a minority position in this bargaining session, and if you can get something versus nothing, that's a whole lot better deal for everybody. And not to mention that we work with Washington County every day. These aren't people that we hate. These are our friends. These are people we go to church and school with. You know, we see them every day at the grocery store. We work daily with police department, fire department, the jail, water, sewer, solid waste, education. I mean, there's a lot of things in communication back and forth between school systems, and creating an element of extreme animosity between 2 local governments in the same county is not productive for anybody. Amen. I wish I had a different conversation with this group and with my fellow Johnson Cityans. But reality is reality, and that's where we are, folks. So, commissioners, that is pretty much the full explanation of where we are, how we got there, and the realities of doing something different.
May I just add one thing to what you
Please.
said? You alluded to the legislative fix, and again, I'll reference that second to last paragraph in the McMinn County lawsuit, look it up. It says, something to the effect, though the arguments are compelling, and then it points to the legislature. And so about a year and a half ago, this group was in Nashville, and we were meeting with our legislators, and I was poking at one of them particularly. And I got the initial brush off that you heard from the city manager, which is, oh, they outnumber us and they'll never vote for it and it's a lost cause. And I pushed and I said, there are a lot of private acts that the general legislature passes in spite of the fact they don't apply to anyone but an isolated instance. And so I said, I think if you wanted to pass it, you probably could. Because at the time, this person, I won't name him, but he was the speaker, deputy speaker. So I poked it at it again, and I said, you know, if you would file this, I think you need to pursue it. And so there is legislation sitting on the docket in a subcommittee, K-12 subcommittee in Nashville today, that would remedy the situation as we deal with it now. That until it is remedied legislatively, we're going to be stuck in the place we're stuck in. And so though I've loved getting all the emails and phone calls, genuinely, they're directed at the wrong person. Because there are two legislators whose names are on that bill. One of them would like to be your next congressman. He's currently the second senior most member of the state Senate. I think he can get it passed if he wants to. And the other is one of the senior most members of the House of Representatives. Same thing. I'd say put the challenge out there, folks. Things move when people demand it. And we've been there. We go there every year. We have that same conversation every year. But it's only when they hear from regular people that it begins to matter. And I think, I just don't want to leave it at, it has no chance in the legislature. Crazier things have passed legislative bodies than that piece of legislation.
Amen.
Very good. Any other comments at this point? We may at the end of our session here. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Santos, very much. We will open, this is not a public hearing, it's just public input. We have 12 people who have signed up, plus any of the school board members who would like to address the commission as well. We are going to hold everybody to 3 minutes. We'll indulge perhaps the school board, maybe 5 minutes, since you've spent a lot of time on this. Vice Mayor Wise is our timekeeper. What we would ask you to do is to be as factual as you can. As you've heard from all of this tonight, we all have emotion over this. We all have likes and dislikes over what has happened. But the court doesn't rule on those things. And so the facts of where we need to go have to be very clear and have to be tested of how that would play out in court. If someone has made the same point that you want to make, we would ask you just defer that and let somebody else with a different point come up. That would be very, very good, so we can get as much information as possible. Mr. Peterson, before we go into public input, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done. I know you've done a yeoman's haul on this thing for many, many months. And we have a document in front of us that we're going to be voting on next week that I know you've spent a lot of heart and soul on. And I know you have kids in the schools, and I have grandkids, and John has children in the school, and Joe has children in the school, and we need to get your grandkids up here so they can be in the school as well. So we,
Wife taught in the school.
that's right,
And your
as a
kids
teacher.
went.
So we all
Thank
have
you,
a
Mayor.
huge,
If I could say one thing, I would also like to say thank you to Mayor Grandy.
he is here.
Joe has been very good to sit down and work with me to work through this thing. We have not agreed the whole way through. We probably both have bruises on the tops of our head somewhere where we've disagreed and butted heads on things, but it has been a very open, direct, and sincere negotiation and done in very good faith. And wherever we land on this thing, I really appreciate the ability that you've brought forward and your willingness to sit down and at least try to work something out, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to point out Mayor Grandy's sitting over here. We have County Commissioner Jody Jones sitting here in the middle of the center section, and we have Mayor Chuck Vest from Jonesboro sitting back here. So thank y'all for being willing to come up here and come and listen, and that's really important. It's a big statement to say. So I will see if there's anyone on the school board who would like to make any comments.
I would, but I'd prefer to hear the public first.
All right, that will be fine. We'll put y'all at the end, and that's all right. So I will call your name, and the first one on the list is Angela Livingston. If you would come forward, please. And you have 3 minutes.
All right, I won't take that long.
Okay.
You're good. I'm Angela Livingston. I am the current PTA president at Lake Ridge Elementary, but tonight I'm just speaking as a parent and a citizen of Johnson City. Our school is currently at capacity, and we are getting an addition, which we are very grateful for. But it's just a temporary solution to the bigger problem. When that addition is completed, our school will probably already be at capacity again. And I know there are several Washington County schools that sit with empty classrooms, empty hallways. So we are just wanting to bring that up and say that the county commissioners, we elected them to provide for all the students fairly, and we feel like they haven't done that. So I just asked you all to stand up for what's fair for all of the citizens and all the students, and to stand up against the unfair use of our tax dollars. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much.
Passed.
You get to reset that quickly, right? Okay. Bobby Lady? Lady, okay, thank you.
Yes, my name's Bobby Lady. I'm a resident of the city of Johnson City, here in Washington County too. I really, as a taxpayer, would hate to see either way this thing goes. As Mr. Peterson said, we're going to be losers. I don't want to see our tax dollars wasted in legal litigation that is not going to turn up anything. I tend to agree that possibly the legislative way would be the best to go. But I'm just telling you, I don't want any of my tax dollars paying taxes to the legal system and them come up the only winners, and every taxpayer in Washington County and Johnson City loses. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lady. Next is Scott Holly.
Yeah, how you doing? First of all, as I'm walking before you start my time, I'd like to thank all of you, and Dennis, exactly what he said. He had a lot of hit points there, and also the Vice Mayor, Joe Wise, there too. First of all, for those who don't know me, my name is Scott Keith Holly. I'm a resident of the city of Johnson City in Washington County. And my granddaughter is a student at 10 Acres Elementary School. I believe that we all need to come together and get along to do what's best for all citizens and taxpayers of Washington County. The funding will not help students succeed academically, but every school deserves to get as much money as they are due to provide for all students, county or city, a more proper education. Clearly, the money must be spent wisely to yield benefits, but I believe there needs to be truly equity in both systems. Right now, we are Johnson City, we are Jonesboro, and we are Washington County. We should be as a whole. Taxpayers fighting against taxpayers, got to stop. We are as county as a whole, and I believe it's time we come together as a whole to reach an agreement on this issue. If not, the students are the ones who are going to suffer. This debt that we have as taxpayers we'll be paying, and that will not be paid off during my lifetime, and our children's children and their children's children will be paying for it. So it's time to get the county out of debt to the city. You know, truth sounds like hate to those who hate the truth, and the truth that it's time to put a stop to the reckless and wasteful spending here in Washington County. And I would like to urge the city of Johnson City to accept the offer of the 12.5, because you've got taxpayers fighting taxpayers. We're all a whole, we're all as one. And let's put a stop to this. And I admit that Mr. Grandy back there is really trying to do what's right for the county, but some of the commissioners are not, as this lady just said. 90% of them need to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holly.
Yeah.
Jennifer Hollinger?
I'm a parent to Town Acres. I'm the PTA president at Indian Trail. I have kids in the Johnson City school system. I have one that's still to enter the system, and my biggest concern here is we have such a big problem. We're looking so short-sighted. We have so many needs in the city for the next 10 to 15 years, and this deal seems great. I mean, $12.5 million, that is better than nothing. I don't think we should do a lawsuit. I don't think that that definitely doesn't seem like an option. But I don't know that accepting this money from the city truly really meets the needs. I sat at a meeting last week where I understood that if we accepted this money, Town Acres potentially could get a new school by 2030. If we don't accept it, Town Acres could get a school by 2034. Regardless, that's way too long. That does not meet our school's needs at all. Town Acres needs a new school now.
That was
okay.
not your time. That was Scott's time.
That's okay.
You're doing so well. Keep going. Sorry,
You dropped the ball over here.
yeah.
Town Acres needs a new school now. I mean, my kids have been there for 6 years. If you haven't been in our school, you have to come to our school and see it's not safe. Town Acres consistently ranks as one of the top schools in the state. Forget the city. In the state, we rank as one of the top schools, and yet we have one of the most inferior schools that exists. We definitely have the most inferior school when you look at our facility in all of Johnson City. It's not safe, it's not healthy. Our main building is 52 years old. There is a mildew and mold issue. My children's hair, backpack, clothes comes home smelling of it all the time. You can smell it when you walk in the building. Safety, I mean, our kids walk in between buildings constantly, every day, 3-4 times a day, and all they have is this tiny little fence that's 5 feet tall that anybody can jump over. Our playgrounds are not fenced in. Intruders could come in at any time. Our kids can run off. Like, it's the most unsafe elementary school here. We've been asking, since I've been very involved in the PTA for 4 years for stuff, we asked just for security cameras, and we couldn't even get those. We are not getting our needs at Town Acres. This $12.5 million nowhere comes close to meeting our needs. I would rather see you say no to this agreement. I don't think we should sue, but I would rather see a tax increase in the city, knowing the money is going to stay in the city and we're going to use it for our needs. Because who's to say Washington County isn't going to turn around and do another tax increase to pay for this $500,000 a year? Like, I just feel like we're just doing circles around something. I don't want to create animosity between Washington County and Johnson City, but right now we have a lot of needs in Johnson City, and $12.5 million over 25 years is going to come nowhere close to meeting those needs. And as a Town Acres parent, I have a little kid who's getting ready to come into Town Acres, and I'm highly considering not sending him there because of the safety and because of the health concerns. He was born really early. He had respiratory problems. The health of our buildings, that mildew, that smell, that mold, whatever it is, for children that have health problems is not the best place for them. So we need to do something. So I'm asking you guys as city commissioners to, whatever you do, think about all of these city schools, think about Town Acres. This $12.5 million is not going to meet our needs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, if you would just address how $500,000 a year, how that could be used to leverage money
Yes, ma'am.
for a school building.
Well, a couple of things. A new Town Acres school building is not on the school CIP right now. Okay, so
CIP means
the
what?
capital improvement.
Thank you.
Or community investment program, whatever you want to call it. So the need has been identified, but it's not on a list of things to be funded short-term. So whether this agreement is approved or disapproved isn't going to produce the money to do a new Town Acres school. In the early 90s, the voters approved through a referendum a sales tax increase that was dedicated to school construction, and it's called the PEP, the People's Education Plan. The PEP funded the construction of 3, maybe 4 of our existing elementary schools without any other outside funding. The PEP, as it currently exists and with projected cash flows going through it, is going to be able to finance the 3 elementary school additions that are currently under design. We just did $1 million worth of paving at the schools. We have done some roofs at the schools, and there was a couple of other things. Altogether, that's about $17 million worth of work. So we've got that funded. We're working those things off, okay? If we don't get the $12.5 million from Washington County, we're out to about 32 or 34 before that PEP plan will have enough cash flow to debt service a $25 to $30 million borrowing. But by the time we get that far out, Town Acres is a $30 million school without question. If we include that $500,000 a year, then that date backs up probably to 28 or 30, somewhere in there. So what that does is it shortens that window that it's going to take to cash flow a new $30 million building by several years. Now, if the decision is made that a new Town Acres school wants to be expedited, it'll either take a city property tax increase, a county property tax increase, or a reprioritization of other projects that have already been committed to, such as West Walnut Street reconstruction and the Knob Creek Road project that's been committed to. So to get to a Town Acres school, what I'm really saying, it's going to take a tax increase no matter which way you go. So I hope that answers the question.
I think your 3 minutes are up, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Jessica Sutherland?
Hello, my name is Jessica Sutherland. There are 2 things. First, I am here on behalf of the Johnson City Council of PTAs. Kristen Marshall, who is the president, was unable to be here, and she has asked me to read the statement on their behalf. The Johnson City Council of PTAs, the JCC PTA, stands in opposition to the interlocal agreement currently being considered between the Johnson City Commission and the Washington County Commission related to the capital funding for school projects. The JCC PTA strongly encourages the Johnson City Commission to not accept any agreement which does not ensure appropriate, equitable funding to meet the needs of the Johnson City Schools 5-year plan, which includes additions to 3 elementary schools and the construction of a new Town Acres Elementary School. The proposed agreement would ultimately shortchange the city by $37 million over 25 years. Speaking on behalf of the JCC PTA, Council President Kristen Marshall says, "We have twice now watched Washington County find alternative funding solutions for their schools that they say do not require them to provide equal funding to Johnson City schools as required by law. By accepting this interlocal agreement, I am afraid that the city will be setting a precedence which will allow the county to continue their methods and not provide money to city schools. As citizens of Johnson City, we pay our taxes to the county to provide improvements to all schools, both county and city. We expect our county commissioners to provide for all of their constituents fairly. I ask that the city commissioners, as our elected representatives, stand up for their constituents against this unfair use of our tax dollars. As our elected representatives, we ask the City Commission to firmly advocate for the students' families and taxpayers of Johnson City and ensure equitable funding for the 2 school systems in the county." Myself personally, I'm a parent at Town Acres, a member of multiple PTA boards. I understand the facts in this case. I also understand that this needs to be changed legislatively. This interlocal agreement, while I am against it, I understand that something is better than nothing. I don't understand why we accept something is better than nothing from the county. We are Washington County residents. We deserve to be treated as Washington County residents, and that includes fairly sharing these tax dollars. You say that the Washington County was great in this negotiation, but if they were so wonderful in this negotiation, they would have split equitably the funds as the intent of the law. I understand it's legal, it is not ethical, but that's where we're at. The question now becomes, how do we fund a new Town Acres? Not in 10 years, in 2, in 3. This school is not going to last for 10 years, so I guess that becomes the big question, and I have not heard an answer. So I would be interested to hear ideas on how we aggressively fund or expedite the process. In my mind, Knob Creek is fine. Don't know what you're going to do to it, but I feel like an elementary school would be a much better use of our taxpayer dollars. If that's the choice that we have, that would be my vote. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Dwayne King, Mr. King.
Thank you. My name's Dwayne King. I'm a Johnson City Countyan. I think that would be right, wouldn't it?
I like that.
You know, 3 years ago, and it's like this first surface, I was a legislative liaison for the Science Hill PTA. I was sitting in the school board meeting, Dan Alexander, right after we had our county taxes raised. And Dick Manahan just really pulled it out of him, this inequitability of the tax funding revenue. I'd never known that was a problem up until then, and most of the school board members sitting there acted like they didn't either at that time.
Talking about Dan Eldridge?
Yes.
Okay.
The county mayor at the
Yes,
time.
okay.
And so I was taken aback. I met with Dick Manahan. We went over it, and I took my own time and money, drove to Nashville, met with all our local legislators, met with the attorney for the state comptroller's office. He sat down and provided me all the documents that you've all gone over about the McMinnville and the lawsuits, why it wasn't won. And I talked to Dennis Peterson about it. I talked to Steve about it, and that y'all were going to try and get a legislative remedy, but it never got out of committee. And one of the reasons I think it didn't get out of committee because those committee members, before they sat down to vote on it, didn't have a parade of PTA parents. I'm glad to see the PTA represented here tonight. I was upset that we didn't see a parade of PTA presidents and mothers of Johnson City schools at the city commission or county commission meeting, because Jonesboro certainly had their act together. They had mother after mother after mother getting up and speaking about why they should. We had no one, not one parent in any of the 3 meetings that I went to. So I'm glad to see now we have some activity. What I'd like to see us do is accept that, take the money. Because if we get the legislative change we're looking for, that's a contract. We keep that money, as I understand it, unless it's written into that agreement that if the law changes, they don't owe it to us. So then I'd like to see us take a different approach this time, that we, by what Mr. Weiss says, we had the representatives there to introduce the bill to get it into committee. But before it gets there, we need to have a lobbyist and mothers lined up, because what gets that bill passed and get it out of committee is, hi, is Mr. Jones here? My name is Mary Beth. I have 3 students in Town Acres. Have you got a minute? I'd like to share with you. We need your help. That's how you get it passed. Those legislators, 90% of the time, are clueless what they're voting on. I know, I've been there. I've had 2 laws that have my name on it. I've got laws passed up there. I know what it takes. And we had to knock every door of every legislator in that Nashville office, and you got to knock it with empathy. They have to have a reason to see it your way. So I'd like to see us take the money, but I'd also like to see us take a new approach at getting that law changed and do it with a real concerted attack, and mothers are going to be that solution. That's who has to be there in Nashville. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. King. Thank you very much. Jamie McGee.
I am the PTA president at Fairmont, but I'm here tonight as a parent and a citizen. As a city taxpayer and property owner and a parent of students at 2 of our schools, which is Fairmont and Indian Trail, I want to thank you for your support and your interest and your involvement in our schools, as they are the heart and future of our city. I know that the Fairmont community feels fortunate that Fairmont was constructed as a result of the appropriate capital funds sharing when the county constructed Ridgeview and Grandview. That was over 10 years ago. In addition to our beautiful and very safe building, much of the high school renovations were accomplished with that funding because the city and the county did the right thing for the safety and the interest of all students on both sides of the lines. As a parent and city taxpayer, I feel very strongly that my tax dollars should be invested into the Johnson City schools. We want to thank you on behalf of our PTA for your devotion to our goals and our safety of our students and our success.
Thank you very much. Tim Haywood.
My name is Tim Haywood. I live in the Town Acres subdivision of Johnson City. I have a fourth grader at Town Acres who's been there since kindergarten. I have a kindergartner at Town Acres, and I'll be sending another one next year to Town Acres. Town Acres is a very special, important place to us. My wife, her brother, and her sister all went to Town Acres as students. My wife's on the PTA board, and she did her student teaching at Town Acres. Town Acres is very important to our family. I think my perspective is a little unique in that over the past few years, I've worked extensively with different schools and programs in the Washington County school system to assist with their fundraising campaigns. I can tell you from being in the Jonesboro Elementary School that there are absolutely needs in that county and in that school, and that is undeniable. And I don't believe anyone here is suggesting that the needs of the city should trump the needs of the county. But as a taxpayer both in the city and county, I believe what we're trying to communicate is that the needs of the county should not continually trump the needs of the city. It needs to be equitable. When I pay my taxes, it is done so with a level of trust that those dollars are going to be spent wisely and in a manner that serves me and my neighbors. We all know the numbers. Our student population is growing, and as a city, we need more classrooms for our children. We cannot simply just overcrowd our classrooms. I've traveled extensively through our region into North Carolina, Southwest Virginia, and Kentucky, and I can tell you there are schools in Southwest Virginia and Kentucky that would almost bring you to tears when you see the learning environments that many of these educators are working in. These environments are worse than Jonesboro Elementary, and from a soundness of structure and clean facility point of view, most are even worse than Town Acres. But here's the difference in my view. Of the hundreds of school buildings I've been in, including my time in every single one of the Washington County schools, I've never seen a school more susceptible to outside threats than Town Acres Elementary. As a county taxpayer, I'm concerned with how my county tax dollars are spent, and I will be voicing those concerns with my vote in the upcoming election. As a resident of the city, I'm concerned about overcrowding in our school, and I am absolutely concerned for the safety of my children and the teachers in their school. As a city resident, I bring these concerns to the city and I say, fix it. I want the county to act fair. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. If they don't, the city commission and the school board has a mandate to give our students a safe learning environment. As a resident that voted for you and a faithful taxpayer, I'm entrusting you with a piece of my most important God-given gift and responsibility, and that is assisting me in the safe education of my children. Whether Washington County decides to play fair or not, as parents and residents of this city, we are looking to you and trusting you to figure this out. We're asking that you make the necessary improvements and additions to our schools and build us a new and safe Town Acres Elementary.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Helen Harmon.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking public comment this evening. We appreciate it. My name is Helen Harmon, and I'm the treasurer of the PTA at Southside Elementary, and I am here speaking as a representative of our PTA. We are concerned about the proposed interlocal agreement and its effect on the availability of capital expenses for Johnson City Schools now and in years to come. We believe that this agreement, if passed, sets a dangerous precedent for future funding for our city schools. And accepting the terms of this agreement signals to Johnson City taxpayers, teachers, parents, and students that capital improvements to our schools are taking a back seat to the needs of our county schools. Until a fair solution is proposed, we request that you deny the agreement currently before you for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harmon. Rick Smith.
Thank you for taking my comments. I'm a resident of the city of Johnson City as well as the county of Washington. I'll repeat a lot of what others have said, that this doesn't seem fair, but perhaps it's legal or not. The legislature probably does have the best way to change this, but a good way to put pressure on the legislature is to fight. Get in a fight with the county about this and show the legislature, hey, step in and solve this. Show some leadership at the state level to fix this problem in this loophole of the intent of the law. So for that reason alone, I would say turn the deal down or tell the county, hey, pay the whole half that you should have done it. If you want this school now, if you borrow the money to get it, then you got to pay half of it to the city under bonds. If you don't want to get it now, wait 5 years and accumulate the money, but you got to wait 5 years. You can also wait 5 years while you're fighting over this lawsuit. In the meantime, they'll come to the table, they'll talk some more about it. Now, if we all want to get along and accept some of the money, that's okay too. Take some of the money, and as a lot of these other good people have said, be prepared as the city commission to raise taxes on the Johnson City citizens to fund the needs that they need of their schools and that they are here asking for. Show leadership and say, okay, we took some of the money from the county to be good residents, and now we got to make up the rest of it with a tax hike. But there it is. That's what we need to meet the needs of the city. Or you can say, we fought, we lost, and now we got to raise even more taxes to cover the difference, but at least we gave it a try. And in the meantime, if we take the deal and are barred from going after the money, if the legislature does change the law, because it's an element of the deal to say we won't pursue litigation, if the legislature changes the law, we're still stuck by that contract. So my point is there's one of three options. You either raise the taxes to fund the entire amount if we fought and lose with the county, you raise taxes to get the rest of the money that we missed out on from the county that we need to meet our needs, or you choke off our schools and our school system that do a fantastic job of educating our children and make them do their job with less resources than they deserve. Mr. Crabtree is a teacher. He's a fine one. He does a great job. He could do a lot more with $30 million more dollars, not 12 and a half. So give him the $30 million. If it comes all from one tax increase or 12.5 million from the county and 17.5 million from a city increase, don't give them the third option of do your same job with 12 million only. So raise the taxes all the way, raise the taxes part of the way. Don't leave the city schools choked off with nothing. That would be my request and the wisdom of the commission to show leadership and make the hard choice and say we're doing what we need to do for our schools, regardless of where the money itself comes from. Get the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you. Mr. Crabtree, your name was just mentioned. Come on up.
Good evening. As mentioned, my name is Joe Crabtree. I am a resident in Johnson City. Proud to say that, by the way. I do teach 7th grade social studies at Liberty Bell Middle School. It's been a change for me. I moved from Indian Trail for 14 years to Liberty Bell, and I also have the honor of representing the teachers of Johnson City as the president of the JCEA. I struggle with what to say tonight as I've been listening to everything that's been going on, and it's a funding issue. It is a funding and equity issue. It absolutely is. And to Mr. Wise's comments, we're going to go for the fight. That's one thing that we know how to do in the TEA, Tennessee Education Association. And in fact, we are going to take the fight to the Hill. I'll be in Nashville along with some of my other teachers and anyone else that wants to attend with us in 2 weeks. We're having a rally in Nashville on March 16th. The day after that is what we call Civication. That's where we go and meet with our legislators. I will meet with our former deputy speaker, as well as other legislators on the Hill, and we will be taking this there. And I would invite all of our PTA with us. You know, and you're absolutely right. What I've heard previously, it takes everyone. Trust me, they get really tired of hearing of me. They've seen for many years now, and fresh faces are what we need to do that. I'm still going to urge you not to take this deal, for the simple reason that it's going to set the tone that it's okay to do what the county is doing to us. You know, I recently moved back to Johnson City. I've been living out of the city for a while, still teaching here, and regrettably I did that, but came back. And I realized the fact that our city taxpayers pay a lot of money. We fund a lot of what the county pays. I know for a fact that we fund over 60% of the property taxes. We pay 2/3 of the property taxes in the entire county. We pay over 80% of the sales tax in the entire county. That's a lofty amount of money coming from the city, and the city's not getting a lot in return. The job of not just our city commission, and let me stop there and say this, I know all of you, I have taught some of your kids, I teach some of your kids now. I've worked with your wife, who I adore and miss her dearly. And Dr. Fowler's not here, but I taught his son and loved him just as much. And I'm sitting back here while you're going through all this, emailing my students because they're having questions about grades and work, and we work tirelessly for what we do. Johnson City has really specific needs right now. We are taking in an extra 100 students every year. We are getting 100 more students every year. And if you think about that in terms of an elementary school, every 5 years, we have enough students to build a new elementary school. And I cannot remember the last time we built an elementary school. It was certainly not in the 21st century, from what I can recall. Except when I take it back, we do have Fairmont, and it's a beautiful school.
Expanded.
Big school. But we have certain needs that need to be met, and the county is not doing that. And I'll wrap it up soon, I promise, Mr. Wise. But I ask you to not take the deal. Go back and renegotiate. This kind of deal is going to set the tone for the future, and this is not something we can do over and over again. This is their second time doing it in the county, and we're losing. Our students deserve better. We have 48% of the population of students, and they deserve better. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crabtree. Mr. Art Fowler.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you tonight? I'm Art Fowler. I've got 3 kids in schools, one at Science Hill, one at Liberty Bell, and one at Town Acres. I'm also a lawyer in Johnson City, and I understood exactly what Ms. Sandos said the entire time, and it makes sense. So what we really, and I've kind of struggled with what to say tonight, and I've listened to everybody, and it's, right now our society is very divided. And it's tough to see. And I think the issue that's been created is also divisive. And it's put y'all in a tough spot. And from what I understand and what I've heard and what I've read, is the interlocal agreement is the best deal that y'all can come up with. And that's great. It gives $12.5 million, or $12.5 million over 25 years. I would question, as a lawyer, I'd question, what's the difference between a capital and maintenance, based upon what Ms. Hollinger had to say. How does it work? Are there any loopholes in there that can be exploited? And try to wrap those loopholes up. But the issue that you got is how do you go back? And you can't. The only thing you can do is go forward. And one of the 2 most important things that we have with the city schools are safety and education. How are we going to educate our students? Right now, Town Acres is not as safe. It's a very open campus. Everybody's right that the playground I drove past today, the playground's not fenced in for the bigger kids. The little kids, it's got just a little fence that kids jump over. It's got gates around the center area where the kids eat lunch, but anybody can get over those gates. It's not bad. The other more important part, especially for me, is that the class size. My son's at Liberty Bell, and his language arts class has got 38 students. I could not function in that kind of class. I could not be the best possible student ever. And that's what we want our kids to be. We want to provide them the best education they possibly can. I think the agreement, if that is the best that can be worked out, that's great. But again, I'd caution and be careful about what you're doing. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Thank you very much. Mr. John Wood.
I'd like to make a quick couple of points. The first point is that I don't know that anyone in this room is looking to get into some sort of animosity relationship or increase hostility with our county neighbors. No one wants that. And when we're looking at this deal, it is unfair to frame the choice in those terms as take the deal or increase animosity. That being said, one thing that I have looked at, and I'm an attorney, and I looked at this Athens versus McMinn case, and as a lot of people have touched on, this thing is just not conclusive. It's not a conclusive case for this agreement that the county has entered into. The Athens versus McMinn case related to a separate county school capital project fund funded by taxpayers over the course of 10 years to be used for capital projects. Importantly, this fund was for capital projects, and each and every year of those 10 years, all taxpaying residents of the county were able to view the Board of Education's budget and comment as well as vote on various commissioners. In contrast, the at-issue Washington County School Agreement relies on a county lease with the town of Jonesboro. A lease is an operational cost and thus mandated by equity and statute to be apportioned equitably among taxpaying county residents. Athens versus McMinn does not apply, and certainly does not conclusively apply. The Tennessee statute, as we all know, mandates that all school funds should be collected by taxpayers should be apportioned equitably. If this issue has been so well settled by statute in Athens versus McMinn, then why would, something to consider, the county's attorneys at Baker Donaldson prohibit litigation along with this partial payment? The answer is because it is not a conclusive answer. It's a gray area, whether the lease is an operational cost or not. Looking at this here, I would find it hard to believe, or what the argument, I struggled to wrap my mind around what the argument would be that a lease is not an operational expense. So the case here, I think, is quite favorable for the city. If they choose to fight it, whether this is a good deal or not, I don't know. But it's certainly not a conclusive legal argument that McMinn controls here, and the city would lose its suit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wood.
Can I clarify something?
Sure.
There, I don't think anyone has suggested that the Athens McMinn case is compelling with respect to the Jonesboro deal. It is the time bomb we're left sitting on if we don't take the Jonesboro deal. Because here's what happens. 3 years from now, 5 years from now, they've banked enough cash to do exactly what the McMinn County case sets up. That's why it matters. Because we can fight them over Jonesboro, and I'll tell you, here's a little secret. There are some people who have done this to you who would love if we did that, because that gives them the political out to tell our good friends in Jonesboro, sorry, you gotta wait. Johnson City is a bunch of big jerks, and they sued us, and they ruined our good deal. And the Jonesboro folks are stuck, and I'll tell you, I served on the county commission before I came to this commission. And I've been in Jonesboro, I've been in the old Boones Creek School, I've been in Town Acres, I've been in all these schools, and there's no one here who can make a case that any of the schools we're talking about are appropriate or adequate. There are needs in each of these places, in addition to our population issues, okay? The question becomes, if we do this, then what do they do next? And so I don't think if we fight on this particular point, they all of a sudden become open to discussing it further with us. I think what happens is we end up in a situation where they have a scapegoat, its name is Johnson City, and they have 3 to 5 years to build up cash, and eventually Jonesboro gets its school and we get zero. And is that fair? No. Is that reasonable? No. But sometimes things aren't fair, and sometimes things aren't reasonable. I have 3 students in the Johnson City schools across 3 different buildings. I care very much about city schools. I don't think it's reasonable that 100% of taxpayers pay for something, and then at the outset we say 48% of our students are excluded from its benefit. I don't think that's fair or reasonable. And that's why I think it matters that the legislation be changed. But we don't get to do that here. If I could be king for a day, there are all kinds of things that would be different. Some of them might even be good, but I can't. And so we have to just kind of live with where we're at and recognize what some of, I was elected to the county commission in the year the McMinn County case came out. And I remember being at a CTAS, County Technical Advisory Service meeting. And I will tell you, on the other side of the equation, our friends in CTAS, some of them were darn near giddy at this McMinn County case because they could see what it set up. And it set it up, and until it's changed, some folks are giddy. And until we come up with a better solution, advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. You're here tonight. The county took this up 3 weeks ago. Raise your hand if you were at the county commission meeting. It's a 3.
Some of y'all were elected officials.
And I think all of you were school officials, which I don't say to dismiss it, but we hear you. We feel the same way about this that you do, I think, having heard you. But that's the tension right now, is if we do nothing, what happens? If we do something, what happens? And I'll tell you, when I look at where those cards are gonna fall, we've been dealt a lousy hand. And shuffling the deck is not going to change the hand we have. I wish it would. So, sorry. There you go. Back to you.
The timer on.
Yeah. Apparently I didn't set the timer. Apologies. I'll put it back up next time.
That's the end of our list. If there anyone on the school board who would like to make any comments, please come on forward. And just so everybody knows who you are, Mr. Kinnick.
Yeah, my name's Jonathan Kinnick. I got 2 points, but first I want to say no one believes that Jonesboro does not need a school. I have never heard any of my colleagues on the school board say anything contrary to Jonesboro needing a school. We know they need it. That's not what this is about. This is about the methods that were used to fund it. And as Joe alluded to, it was not fair. I would call it not ethical, but the county has 2 projects in a row basically said they don't care about 48% of the kids that live in their county that just happen to live in Johnson City. So one of my points is that there is one potential avenue that would result in some money, in that Jonesboro has identified their payments of $500,400 a year as maintenance to Jonesboro, where that maintenance is supposed to be shared. And if the whole amount qualified, which it may not, that'd be $460,000 a year, which would get close to the amount we're agreeing to now. Is that a guarantee? No. Is it guaranteed it's that amount? No. But there's possibilities there, that there's something and that it might be close to that amount. So that's one possibility. But my bigger point, and this goes to what Vice Mayor Wise was saying earlier and was including in his comments just now, if we agree to this, there is a covenant not to sue in there. And I'm not sure everybody was aware of. We cannot sue on anything related to the Jonesboro project. So say this legislation, it's not likely, but say the legislation changes out of this legislation session, and we've already agreed to it, we get nothing. If it changes next year, we still get nothing related to Jonesboro. If it changes 5 years from now, we still get nothing related to the $32.75 million that is being spent on Jonesboro. That is huge. There's no guarantee it'll be changed, but I fully agree with what he's saying, that we're talking to the wrong people. Our city commission didn't start this. Washington County started this. It's not, I hate the shoes that you were in, but that's what we're dealt, like you were just saying. But it didn't start here. But we need to do exactly what he was saying, contacting those unnamed legislators to see if we can get it changed. But that does us no good if we sign this agreement, because we've just locked ourselves in to not sue over any of the $32.75 million. And I just don't agree with that.
Is Sonny still here?
Yes, sir.
I don't know what question you're going to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sonny, would you be willing to address the question of what Mr. Kinnick has outlined is the sort of prospective claim? Legislation changes and we're looking at respective, retroactive actions, how would that play out?
Typically, whenever legislation is changed, it is proactive. Normally, whenever legislation is changed, there is a motivating factor to that. It does not retroactively go back and change everything that it possibly could cover. That would be an extreme anomaly out of our legislature if we saw that. So any future potential change in litigation or in legislation is highly unlikely to retroactively apply to any agreements that would currently be existing.
And if there were no agreement, would that change our standing if and I realize I'm asking you a theoretical question about theoretical legislation.
Looking at this theoretically, if there's a contract that exists between the town of Jonesboro and Washington County, and the city of Johnson City has no interaction in that and has no parallel agreements that are in existence, and legislation changes 3 years into the future, we can't go back and then try to take a piece of a pie where there's theoretical money still, because the money doesn't exist at that point. It's not like it's stockpiled somewhere and just sitting and they've got it partitioned off and they're just not giving it. It doesn't exist at that point. So a change in legislation, A, wouldn't make the money suddenly exist, and B, you've got some time limitations, some statute limitations that you would be either up against or out of to go back and stick your hand back into another pot of money. If you want to see an uphill battle to even try to get through the front doors of the court, that'd be a tough one to get through.
Sonny, before you leave, let me ask the question another way. If there was a change in the law, let's say we take this agreement and there was a change in the law, that would not invalidate the agreement in the future. Is that accurate?
Right, so that if we take the agreement.
If we take the agreement and then there's some law change later on, this agreement still is in effect for 25 years, no matter what the change
Correct.
says.
It sits in a silo at that point.
Okay.
As long as those three elements of breach that we mentioned.
Right.
As long as none of those three items have taken place, it continues to sit in its silo.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? So since this money would be future money, because they're paying as they go for the lease, so some of this money, say it changed the law changed in 3 years, so they've got 22 years left, or however long they make their contract for their bond, whatever that comes out to be, they've got all those years left. Well, that money's paid after the law changed. Is there not some potential to go after that money that is being spent on a school building after the law changes?
That would be a breach of the contract.
If we could,
No, I'm saying if we didn't take the contract.
Mr. Kennick, if you could go ahead and finish your comments. I
Okay.
don't want to
Let's-
debate here in
Right,
in
right.
the
That's what
chambers.
it just
Yeah.
sounds like there's still a
Right.
possibility, because that money's not being paid up front before a law would potentially change. It's paid throughout however long their bond ends up being. So I just think there's still some potential there to go after that if the law would change. I'm just saying, you guarantee you won't have any chance to go after that by taking this agreement, because there is a covenant to sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hall?
I'm Kathy Hall. I'm on the Johnson City School Board. I've served with several of you. First of all, I want to thank you for taking your time and listening and setting up the session with the attorneys today. I think that's been helpful for all of us, and thank you for all the thoughts and energy you've put into this. It is so easy to get all these issues tangled up, and we wanted to make sure, as we were talking about our needs, that we didn't tangle them too closely with the Jonesboro project, because we understand Jonesboro needs a school. It's so easy. As a citizen, this makes me so angry, this situation with funding, that makes my head want to explode. But as a school board member, my job our job is to run the best school system we know how. And I will argue that we do one of the best school systems in the state of Tennessee, probably the best. And we do that with a per pupil spending that's average in the state. So I'm really proud of the work we do. It's also our job to tell you what our needs are in capital funding, and I think we've done that. I hope you don't let our needs get too tangled up into all of these other issues. We've been talking about who knew that we'd be continue to expand this quickly, but we are expanding and we are growing every year, and we have needs that are coming up that we were not expecting. The learning plan, Mayor Brock, was a great use of taxpayers' money. We accomplished a lot with less funding than a lot of other school systems would have used. We're looking at doing some similar things with expansion of schools and a new town acres that solves some problems and gives us a larger school. So I'd urge you to help us out with school funding for a new town acres and these expansions of the other schools, and do what else you can on the other front. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Hager, come on up.
Tom Hager, Johnson City School Board. Been asked to make 2 points. One of these has already been stated several times, but I think it's worth mentioning again. In some of our opinions, if Washington County wanted to build this school, they could have waited 3 to 5 years, and that would have saved them the money, which would have been no question. They wouldn't not have had to share any of those dollars. But if they want the school now, they should have done the proper thing, borrowed the money, and shared it the way the law used to be in some of our time on the board, but and split it the way that it should have been. That's it. And good luck with your decision.
Mr. Hager, before you leave, I think you're one of the longest-serving school board members in the state of Tennessee. Close?
He may
Do I
not
have
want
to answer
talk about
that?
Well,
Yes, ma'am, you're
I
correct.
think your service and your commitment to the students, not only of Johnson City, but all over, because I know you've served in some statewide roles and responsibilities as well. And we just want to, since you're up in front of us today, just give you some kudos and
Well,
thank you, and everybody give him a hand.
I appreciate that. I don't do this to get applause. I know your Lady Vols are
Okay,
about half-time.
all right. Thank
But
you.
anyway, appreciate what you do. I really regret that the county's put you into this position. I feel like they have, and there could have been a better solution. I wish you the best in your deliberation to reach a solution in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hager, Tom, just in case you're interested, Science Hill did beat Dobbins Bennett 57-40 tonight.
DB deserved it.
I bet you
You live stream. What are you doing?
I might have a spy at the game that's
We
40
actually sent
scores.
one of our commissioners to be at the game, right?
Yes, yes.
As Dr. Fowler was the sports physician, had to go to the game, be on the sidelines.
Had to go to the game.
Right, right. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the commission? Okay. Well, let me kind of close this by saying thank you. I hope, Desmond, you have been so still sitting over there that you've seen good governance displayed tonight. The audience and everyone who has presented has been so respectful, has presented your viewpoints and your cases in a very understandable and thought-out way, and we appreciate that so much. Those of us up here, the 5 of us who are elected officials, are really trustees of the city with a fiduciary responsibility. And so we will look at this very, very carefully to see if even the potential of a lawsuit outweighs the benefit of accepting this money and what we can do with this money. For me personally, for someone who served on the school board, who was a teacher, who have grandchildren in the school system right now, we have a big responsibility, in our school systems to look out after all of our students. We've heard a couple of different things tonight. One is about the vote that we're going to take in a few days on whether to accept the interlocal agreement or not. But we've also heard about town acres. And so I want to encourage the school board to, have a good plan to bring back to the city commission to say in the short term and long term what we need to be doing there if there are some issues that really need to be addressed. So we will, I'm going to open it up for some final comments from commissioners if they choose. And then, Mr. Peterson, I think we will agree on, we're going to have a special call meeting next week because the week after that's spring break. And we want to have some time to really mull this over, to think about the things we've heard. When we went into special session, we had 4 attorneys with us. So
That's a lot of
we had a
attorneys.
lot of cha-chang, yeah. So we have a lot to think about, and we've tried to share with you everything that we could about that session, and you've shared with us what your thoughts are. So, commissioners, anyone else want to kind of wind up with any final thoughts?
I'll make just a comment.
Okay.
I'd like to echo what the mayor said about the appropriateness of the comments and the eloquence of the presentations that we heard and the passion. I've got this passionate speech I was going to make tonight, but I mean, Vice Mayor Wise has already used all the passion that we have up here on the.
Sorry.
And took it all.
Not on the timer either.
And not on the timer.
I was under 3 minutes.
Right. I'll take the timing over next time if you don't mind. But I want to thank everybody for what they've said. And yes, I get lobbied on this issue on a daily basis at home with a retired school teacher. And I listen to her a lot. But I've heard some things tonight that really has given me some pause to think about this in a different way, both during the executive session and the comments that you've made. And yeah, we need your prayers in how we deliberate this and make this decision in the next week or so.
Do we have a date for that meeting?
We're going to do that right now. Unless, John, did you want to say something?
Just to echo your all's comments that, it's been great to hear from you all specifically and also through the executive session. All of us up here have a vested interest in what happens to the city schools. Jenny and I both served on the school board. As mentioned, I've got 2 children in the public school system. My mother was a teacher in the Johnson City schools, worked out of a modular unit, which probably was where they got the mold for years. So it deeply affects me, just emotionally, and also with what's going on here. And as Jenny says, as fiduciaries of the city, it's imperative that we prioritize those things that are important to the city taxpayer. But again, appreciate the comments and definitely has given us some things to think about and take back this week.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, we need to choose a date for our special call meeting.
I would suggest Thursday, March the 12th, about 4 o'clock.
A week from today.
Week from today, if that works. If that doesn't work, could we do a 7 a.m. meeting on Thursday or Friday mornings?
Say that again.
Thursday the 12th at either 7 a.m. or 4:30. No later than 5 o'clock, we've got an obligation at 6 with the Employee Service Awards dinner at 6, or Friday morning. And I know several of you work and have work obligations, is the reason I'm suggesting an early morning meeting.
And our meeting will be live streamed.
Yes,
We'll
ma'am.
make sure it's that.
It probably is more accessible to interest. I don't know, I'm trying to imagine when it's more accessible to people, but I would, with the 4:30 on Thursday, I'm just thinking at 7 o'clock in the morning at my household, all we're doing is run an Uber.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So if there are people who wanted to come, I mean, neither of those times are perfect, but the 4:30 might be more accommodating.
It works for me. Yeah. John?
Fine. That's fine.
Okay, so
And that,
4:30?
I think that works good for Commissioner Fowler as well. It's
It's his day off.
his day off, so.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any
Okay.
closing comments on your behalf?
Just to reemphasize what the mayor just said, the meeting where the decision will be made will be next Thursday at 4:30. So we'll certainly get a press release out of that. And I would be glad to answer any other questions you may have.
Okay, is there any other business before us? Any final comments from anybody? Very good. We will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Hey, Art, how was Owen?